I thought family meant loyalty. I thought sacrifice would bring love. So when my stepsister got engaged, I gave her everything I had. $60,000. That's how much I paid for a wedding I wasn't even invited to. I found out through a neighbor's call. And when I showed up at the venue, dressed in heartbreak, my stepmother looked me in the eye and said, "We don't need you anymore. Get out." But they didn't know I had a secret, an audio recording, a plan they never thought would come to light. And when I exposed the truth on the mic, the entire wedding collapsed. They tried to ruin me. Instead, they ruined themselves. My name is Camilla Grant, and I'm 28 years old. I've never been the dramatic type. I stay in my lane, mind my own business, and always try to do the right thing, even when people don't treat me the same. That's just how I was raised. After my dad passed away when I was 17, I tried to keep the peace with my stepmother and her daughter, Nina. But peace with them always came at a price. They never truly treated me like family. I was more like a backup, someone they used when they needed help. My stepmother, Diane, was charming in public, but at home, she was sharp and cold. Nina, her daughter, was the star. Always praised, always loved, always the center of attention. And me? I was just the girl in the background. Still, when Nina got engaged last year, Diane came to me in tears. "Camilla," she said, placing a hand on mine. "You know your father would have wanted you to help make this wedding beautiful. You're good with money and organizing. We need you." I didn't know why I said yes. Maybe I was desperate to feel included. Maybe I thought this time would be different. Maybe I was just tired of always saying no. But one thing I did know, once I agreed, there was no going back. Over the next few months, I worked overtime, cut down my own expenses, and put together the entire wedding budget. I paid $60,000 out of my savings, credit cards, and even a small loan. Every floral arrangement, every tasting, every venue deposit, I handled it all. Diane and Nina acted sweet during those months. They texted me with fake thank yous. They sent little heart emojis. They even said they were proud of me. But something felt off. Whenever I asked about my invitation or my role in the ceremony, they brushed it off with, "We're still figuring things out." Or, "Of course you're invited. You're part of this." Still, something inside me kept whispering, "They're using you." But I shut that voice down, because that would be too cruel, right? No one's that heartless, right? I had no idea that the truth would hit me harder than anything I could imagine. The wedding day came on a warm Saturday in early June. I remember waking up early still feeling excited, though I wasn't exactly sure why anymore. I had no dress picked out, no itinerary, no confirmed seat. Still, I curled my hair, put on soft makeup, and wore a pastel blue dress I'd kept in the back of my closet for special occasions. I kept checking my phone, waiting for a message, something from Diane or Nina. Maybe, see you soon. Maybe a last-minute invite to take pictures. Nothing. The silence was loud. Around 11:30 a.m., my phone finally rang. But it wasn't Nina. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, who lived across the hall. Her voice was surprised and a little confused. "Camilla, honey? I just saw Nina's wedding pictures on Facebook. It's beautiful. Are you already at the venue? Or wait, why didn't I see you in any of the family photos?" My heart stopped. "What photos?" I asked slowly. "Oh, sweetheart, it's already started. I thought maybe you were there too." She kept talking, but I could barely hear anything after that. My hands were shaking as I opened my phone and searched for Nina's profile. There it was. Live photos. Laughing videos. Music playing. Nina in a custom white dress with a long veil. Diane in a silver gown. Bridesmaids. Groomsmen. Hundreds of guests. And me? Nowhere. Not a single mention. Not a single tag. I wasn't even listed in the program. I stood in the middle of my room, frozen. The walls felt like they were closing in. I had paid for every single detail of that wedding, and they didn't even bother to invite me? I didn't even think. I just grabbed my purse, threw on my flats, and ran. The venue was only 15 minutes away by car. My thoughts were spinning the whole drive there. I wasn't even crying. I was too stunned.
Too numb.
I told myself there had to be some mistake. Some weird mix-up.
But deep down,
I knew. They had used me. And then they erased me. The wedding venue was a grand estate just outside the city, a place I had personally booked months ago after touring it with Diane. I still remembered how she gasped at the chandeliers, then turned to me and whispered, "This will be the wedding of the decade." And now, I stood at the edge of its marble steps, feeling like I didn't belong. I could hear music playing from inside, the soft sounds of classical strings. Guests were laughing, glasses clinking. Photographers darted in and out of the doors with cameras slung around their shoulders. I walked up to the entrance, my heart pounding. A security guard stepped in front of me. "Name, please?" "I'm Camilla Grant," I said quickly. "I'm the bride's, well, stepsister. I helped plan and pay for the wedding." The guard looked down at his list, slowly scanned the page, then looked back up. "I don't see your name on the guest list, ma'am." My stomach dropped. "You must be mistaken," I said, my voice rising slightly. "I helped pay for this entire wedding. Just ask Diane or Nina." Another man, probably the head of staff, came over and asked what the issue was. I repeated myself, now more frustrated. He stepped away to radio someone inside. Moments later, the doors opened, and there she was.
Diane.
She walked out in a sparkling silver gown, holding a champagne flute, looking like royalty. She froze when she saw me, then smiled, like I was some embarrassing stranger she didn't want to claim. "What are you doing here, Camilla?" she asked, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I came to the wedding," I replied, blinking back the burn in my eyes. "Why wasn't I invited?"
She didn't even blink.
"Because we didn't want you here." I stared at her, stunned. A few heads turned. Even the violinist stopped playing. "I paid for this," I whispered. "I paid $60,000 for this." Diane took a sip of her champagne and smiled wider.
"Yes.
You paid. And now that everything's arranged, we don't need you anymore." She leaned in slightly, voice low and cruel. "So do yourself a favor, sweetheart, and get out." My breath caught. I felt dizzy. "Are you insane? I want my money back. Every penny," I demanded. Her face twisted from smug to sharp. She raised her hand and snapped her fingers. "I want her removed.
Now."
She's trying to ruin the wedding." I barely had time to react before she turned to someone nearby and shouted, "Call the police." That's when something inside me snapped. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and remembered the one thing that could flip the entire day upside down. My hands were shaking as I unlocked it. But my voice? Steady. Cold. "You want to call the police on me?" I said, raising my voice just enough to be heard by the guests nearby.
"Fine.
But before you do, I think everyone here should hear the truth about this perfect little wedding." Diane rolled her eyes, but I caught a flicker of panic behind them. She turned to the security guard. "She's unstable. Don't let her." But it was too late. I tapped the screen and played the voice memo I had saved weeks ago. It had been a total accident at first. One day, I left my phone recording after a vendor call, and it caught a private conversation between Diane and Nina when they thought I had left the room. Something about that conversation had felt wrong. So I kept the recording. Now, the audio echoed through the marble entrance, loud and clear, for everyone to hear. Nina's voice. "Daniel's so easy to handle. Once the honeymoon's over, Mom, I'll have him signing over half his shares. You'll see." Diane's voice, laughing softly. "He thinks love is enough.
Poor boy.
By this time next year, we'll be running that company." Nina. "And if Camilla ever finds out, we'll just cut her off. She's too soft to fight back anyway." The laughter. The confidence. The greed. It played clearly, undeniably. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turned. Someone dropped a wine glass. Guests leaned in, horrified, trying to listen. Diane's face turned ghost white. Then, pushing through the crowd, Daniel, the groom. His face was pale as chalk. "Nina," he said quietly, "what the hell is this?" Nina had just walked out from the ceremony area, still smiling, until she saw me holding the phone. Until she heard her own voice. Her smile vanished. Daniel, wait. I can explain. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut. You lied to me. You were going to take everything from me. No, it was just talk. Mom was joking. No one was joking. I cut in, stepping up to the mic stand by the entryway. My voice rang clear. And then I said the one thing that tore the rest of their illusion apart. They used me to pay for this wedding. $60,000 of my own savings. And then they threw me out. Just like they planned to do with Daniel. A hush fell over the venue. I'm not just exposing them for revenge, I added. I'm doing this because no one deserves to be betrayed by the people they trust the most. People were frozen in place, champagne flutes halfway to their mouths, jaws slightly parted. Some of Nina's bridesmaids looked horrified. Guests whispered to each other, glancing between Diane, Nina, and me. Daniel stepped closer to the mic. His fists clenched. You told me you loved me, he said, voice barely above a whisper. You cried when I asked you to marry me. You said we were building a future. Nina stepped forward, tears welling in her eyes, but they looked more like panic than heartbreak. Daniel, please, you weren't supposed to hear it like that. It was taken out of context. My mom was just...
No, he snapped.
I heard you. You laughed. You called me easy to handle. You used Camilla.
You used me.
Diane tried to step in. Daniel, don't throw away your future over a little drama. This is just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, he shouted. You plotted to steal my company. He turned to the stunned crowd. There will be no wedding today, he announced.
People gasped.
Someone even clapped in the back, though they were quickly hushed. Nina looked like she might collapse. Her face flushed red, her mascara beginning to run. You're making a mistake, she said desperately. We can fix this. Daniel took a long breath, looked directly at her, and said,
No, Nina.
The mistake was ever trusting you. Then he turned to me. Camilla, thank you for saving me from this. For the first time in years, I felt like someone truly saw me for who I really was. And then, just as Diane tried to slither away into the back garden, police sirens wailed outside the venue gates. 2 officers stepped through the front entrance. One of them held a phone. We received a call from this number, he said, nodding toward me. I raised my hand. That's right, I said calmly. I have evidence of an attempted fraud involving a business asset transfer, and I'd like to press charges. Gasps echoed through the crowd once again. Some guests quickly pulled out their phones. The officers replayed the recording for verification. After a quick discussion with Daniel's family, who confirmed that asset transfers were being arranged in the prenup, they placed Diane and Nina under arrest for attempted financial fraud and conspiracy. Nina screamed as they cuffed her. Diane, furious, lunged at me, her voice dripping with venom. You ruined everything. But I didn't flinch. I simply said, No. I just finally stopped letting you ruin me. Diane's screams echoed through the marble hall as the officers tightened the cuffs around her wrists. The wedding atmosphere had completely dissolved. Guests were recording, whispering, frozen in disbelief. Did you hear that recording? She was trying to rob him blind. Nina kept crying, pleading with Daniel as she was led away. Daniel, please, you know me. This wasn't real.
I was just venting.
Mom twisted everything, please. But Daniel didn't say a word. He stood like a man watching a house burn, one he'd only just realized was built entirely on lies. The lead officer, a calm woman named Officer Harris, approached me gently. We're taking them into custody based on the audio and witness confirmations, she said. Do you want to file formal charges? I nodded without hesitation.
Yes.
I'd like to press charges for attempted fraud, financial exploitation, and theft. Officer Harris gave me a firm nod. Then we'll need your full statement, the audio file, and any supporting documentation of payments you made. I opened my phone and began sending her screenshots, bank transfers, credit card charges, invoices with my name on them. While we spoke, Daniel walked over. I can't believe this happened, he said, his voice low. I thought I knew her. I thought I was marrying someone honest. I looked him in the eye. You didn't deserve that. No one does. You didn't either, he replied. You gave everything and they still tried to throw you away like trash. I shrugged lightly, but there was sadness behind my smile. They never thought I'd fight back. At that moment, a tall, sharp-looking man with gray hair approached us. His presence was commanding, confident. I'm Richard Langford, he said, offering his hand. CEO of Langford Medical Tech. I just want to thank you personally for stopping what could have turned into a disaster for my son and our company. I just did what anyone would do, I said quietly. He shook his head. No, Camilla. Most people would have walked away. You stood your ground. That takes guts. He handed me his business card. If you ever need anything, seriously, let me know. Just a few feet away, Diane and Nina were being loaded into the back of the police car. Guests were already dispersing. Some looked embarrassed, others looked angry for having supported such a charade. As the flashing lights faded down the road, I felt my chest rise for the first time all day, not with anxiety, but with relief. Justice had started. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. 3 days after the wedding disaster, I heard a knock on my apartment door. It was Daniel. He stood there, holding a folder. No suit, no formal smile, just a man carrying the weight of betrayal and searching for closure. Hey, Camilla, he said softly. Can I come in for a few minutes? I nodded and stepped aside. We sat at my small kitchen table.
He slid the folder toward me.
I thought you should see this, he said. Inside were pages from a private investigator's report. My eyebrows lifted. I had suspicions, Daniel explained. Things didn't add up. Nina kept rushing me to sign the prenup, kept dodging meetings with my lawyers. I hired someone just to be safe. What did they find? I asked, flipping through. He pointed to a page. There was a guy in Chicago.
Same story.
Engaged to her. She backed out a week before the wedding when she realized he didn't have a family business to inherit. She told everyone he cheated. She nearly ruined his life. I blinked. So, she's done this before? He nodded. And your recording confirmed it wasn't just emotional manipulation. It was a pattern. I exhaled slowly. They used me like a tool. But at least now, everyone knows. Daniel paused for a moment, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. There's something else, he said. This is for you. Consider it reimbursement. Plus interest. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a certified check. $75,000. My hands trembled slightly. Daniel, I want you to take it, he said firmly. I can't undo what they did. But I can at least make sure you're not left in debt because of their lies. I stared at the check, overwhelmed. Thank you. He smiled gently. My father's also looking for someone on our PR team. After seeing how you handled that mic and turned the entire room upside down, he asked about you. I laughed, genuinely for the first time in weeks. You're serious? Dead serious, he replied. He said, if she can speak truth that powerfully under pressure, she belongs on our team. I bit my lip, stunned by how much had changed in just a few days. You saved me, Camilla, Daniel added. You really did. And in that moment I realized something too. I hadn't just saved him. I had saved myself. 6 weeks later, I sat in the back row of a quiet courtroom, watching the final hearing unfold. Diane and Nina stood before the judge, no longer dressed in shimmering gowns or designer heels. Just plain clothes, tired eyes, and the weight of consequences finally catching up to them. Their lawyer tried to downplay the charges, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that the recording was taken out of context. But the judge wasn't moved. Not after hearing the full audio. Not after reviewing the financial records I submitted. Not after reading Daniel's private investigator's report. His words were stern and deliberate. You exploited someone who trusted you and manipulated a man into a relationship under false pretenses for financial gain. You committed conspiracy to defraud. The law does not turn a blind eye to emotional betrayal when it's backed by criminal intent. Diane was sentenced to 18 months in prison for fraud and financial exploitation, with no early release. Nina, considered younger and somewhat influenced by her mother, but still a willing participant, was sentenced to 9 months in jail and ordered to pay restitution to both Daniel and me. When it was over, I didn't cry. I didn't gloat. I just exhaled. A few weeks later, I started my new job at Langford Medical Tech, working on their communications team. It wasn't just a paycheck. It was a fresh start, a place where I was valued, where my voice mattered. I paid off my debts, moved into a quiet apartment with a little balcony, planted flowers, started baking again. I even got a cat named Felix. One night, I stood on that balcony, watching the sunset and thinking about how far I'd come. I thought about all the money I lost, all the trust that was shattered, the betrayal, the humiliation. And yet somehow I had gained more than I ever expected.
Peace. Strength.
And the power of standing up for myself when no one else would. As I looked out at the fading light, my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Just wanted to say thank you again. I hope life's treating you better these days. Coffee sometime? I smiled, but didn't reply.
Not yet.
Because I didn't need anyone else to make me whole. I was already standing strong on my own. In the end, I didn't just survive their betrayal. I won.